Todd McShay's latest player rankings are out, and they reveal a quarterback shakeup at the top. And that could change based on how he does in the college football playoff. We shall see. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's a Wednesday morning. I'm Ryan Smith in for Greeny. A lot to talk about. And take a look at the football crew we have with us this morning. Dominique is here. RC, Desmond Howard, Graz. Everybody's in the house, and we got everything to talk about from college to pros. But let us start with the NFL. And big news from Pittsburgh, where Mike Tomlin has decided to rest Ben Roethlisberger on Sunday. Mason Rudolph will start against the Browns in a game that has playoff implications for a lot of teams. Here's Tomlin on the move.
It does not change our intentions in terms of going to Cleveland this weekend. Football is our game. Our job is winning. We intend to do our job. We intend to prepare with that mindset and ultimately let our play lead us to that destination. We're not seeking comfort, and so the guys that will be on the field will represent us, and the standard that is the Pittsburgh Steelers will be the standard.
Okay, but not everybody agrees with the move. Here's Swagoo yesterday on NFL Live.
This team has not looked good. They've played 1.5 quarters of good football in the last month. And I totally understand it. I mean, Ben is 38, right? And you look at these veterans and you want to have guys fresh going into the playoffs. But based on what I've seen from the Pittsburgh Steelers, they need some game plan to get this thing fixed. I would say 1 quarter, 1.5 quarters, maybe, and then get them guys out of there. But I would not sit Ben. I wouldn't sit any other starters. I give them some reps against the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, it's a tough balance. Do you play them? Do you sit them? Especially based on how they've been playing. Neek, Graz, and RC with us. RC, I'll start with you. Do you think resting Big Ben is the right call, especially when you consider how their offense has been struggling recently?
Yeah, I do think it's the right call. Listen, I wouldn't question Herman Boone for resting Sunshine in this position, so I'm definitely not going to question Mike Tomlin for resting Ben Roethlisberger. Listen, when you look at this season, not having a bye week, also in the season where the playoff seeding changes, number 1 seed is the only team with the bye. You're playing in empty stadiums, so home field advantage won't necessarily be what it used to be. And so fighting for that second spot in hopes that the Miami Dolphins beat the Buffalo Bills and that you beat the Cleveland Browns, I just don't think it's worth it. I think Mike Tomlin is prioritizing rest for his starting quarterback, for his aging quarterback, for his quarterback that struggled a little bit down the stretch, who hasn't had any rest this season, coming off of an elbow surgery. I think this is the smart thing to do. I believe he understands that winning is his job. Winning is what he's paid for, but it's winning in the playoffs and giving yourself the best opportunity to advance. And this is the decision that Coach Tomlin gives him that best chance.
Neek, what do you think?
So first of all, I appreciate Ryan Clark, RC, for starting off easy for you, Ryan Smith. He gave you a nice softball with the Herman Boone reference. I think you can handle that one. That was nice of you. But I do think that as much as Ben Roethlisberger is important to that team, the strong side of that team is the defensive side of the ball. So those guys probably need some rest too. But I would say that Ben Roethlisberger is 38 years old. And he's been playing for like more than 15 years in football. I'm not sure what Swagoo thinks a few more reps is going to do for Ben Roethlisberger, but he is who he is. That team is who they are who they are. I think that rest is much more important, getting them healthy and getting them feeling right going into the playoffs, because a quarter of play is not going to change Ben into a different quarterback. And it's fortunate for them that the second half, particularly the fourth quarter, that looked really good. So they could go in on that high note. Ben Roethlisberger was attacking down the field. They were catching the ball, making plays. So I would be nervous to put them back out there for another quarter and expose Ben to the risk of injury.
Take it up.
Yeah, let's not forget.
You don't want to. They got a good taste in their mouth right now. They had a Michelin 3-star meal in the fourth quarter. You're going to put them back out there, and they're going to get some In-N-Out burger, and then you're going to have to put them on the sideline. It's going to be a problem.
Okay, we already got off to a good start. Graz, I got to ask you, you covered this game for the Steelers. You saw the comeback last week. From what you saw, does this move surprise you at all?
Oh, no. Look, last week, talking to people around that team, they were on a 3-game losing streak, and everybody was saying, look, Tomlin's trying to keep this business as usual. He doesn't like, to panic anybody. They're trying to do things they would normally be doing this time of year to get ready for the playoffs, and this is one of them. Tomlin has a history of sitting Big Ben and others down in Week 17 when things are all locked up. There's no way to get the 1 seed. There's no real difference this year between the 2 or the 3 seed. So this makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be surprised if other guys on the Steelers got some rest as well. Look, they are what they are. They're going into the playoffs with the team they have. They looked good in the second half against the Colts. They looked awful in every other game they played in December. The problems aren't going away. You know, they're not getting Devin Bush, who's their Gary Bertier on defense. He's not coming back. So they're still going to have issues as they go into the playoffs. If they get Big Ben some rest, then they will they'll be in the best position to take advantage of their opportunity.
Everybody's bringing the references today. Okay, all right, we're just getting started, and I want to talk also about the ramifications. Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about what the ramifications of this decision are. There are 5 teams in the AFC that enter the final week of the season at 10-5, and there are playoff spots to be grabbed. Our FPI sees the Colts, the Ravens, and the Titans as the favorites this weekend, while the Browns and the Dolphins enter as underdogs, but clearly sitting Ben is going to help with Cleveland. So this becomes very interesting. Graz, the big story from the Browns last week was the wide receivers going on the COVID list. What's the latest there that you're hearing?
Look, I mean, there are people in that building that are very annoyed about what happened. The wide receivers who weren't allowed to play felt like they should have been, right? That it was unjust that they sat them down. There are other people in the locker room who felt like are annoyed at them for putting themselves in that position where they end up being identified as high-risk close contacts and aren't allowed to play. So, you know, Cleveland is bothered by the fact that they didn't have their team on the field to play the Jets last week and didn't have the opportunity to be at their best in a game that could have locked up the playoff spot already. So they're going to be fired up. They have a lot to play for. They're trying to make the postseason, and they have all kinds of motivation there. But it's definitely a situation in Cleveland where they felt like something was taken from them last week, and they want to atone for that.
And Nick, we've talked all week about whether or not if they lose, is this team a failure? I think everybody agrees they're not a failure. Or is it disappointing? Yeah, that'll be a problem. But I have this question for you. What does it say about the Browns if they lose this game?
That they ain't ready yet. Like what happened last week, I understand that there's some significant explanations for why they lost, but you were still playing the Jets. And no disrespect to the Jets, they have some good players, but I think that's a game that you should win because you have stakes. You're playing for something. And that was just the Jets' second win of the year. So, all right, we'll let you off the hook for that one. But now you're going to play a team that isn't putting their best foot forward. I understand Mike Tomlin said the standard is the standard, and they're going to put the guys out there and try to uphold that Steelers standard, but they're putting worse players out there. And if you can't beat them coming off a loss to the Jets, we'll say they improved, but they ain't there yet.
RC?
Yeah. No, that's real. Dom hit it and said everything you could possibly say about that situation. You can't lose to the Jets and then you lose to the Mason Rudolph-led Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if you're Mason Rudolph, I bet it would be super cool to knock that team out of the playoffs for sure. That's what you would want to do. So Mason Rudolph's going to play extremely hard. But think about this, guys. This is like go and play the Golden State Warriors. I'm not saying that that's where the Steelers are, with Klay Thompson at the 2 or with Kelly Oubre at the 2. And if you watch any basketball, you know Kelly Oubre at the 2 ain't dropping dimes and dropping buckets like what? I'm sorry. Like I'm just saying. Like Klay Thompson. And so if you are the Browns, you have to go out and win this game. You have to go out and finish. And you need to show that you can at some point beat one of the big dogs in your division, even if their starting quarterback isn't playing.
Only been 2 or 3 games already taking Oubre to task. Good. He's dunking. It's only been a couple games. But you know what? I got to get you guys to the Packers because this is another big storyline that we saw yesterday in the NFL. To the NFC, the Packers. Now remember, they can clinch home field advantage this weekend. This is what pregame looked like Sunday night before the Titans took on the Packers. And we found this interesting. Here's Aaron Rodgers on the mindset of playing in elements just like this.
I don't know about anybody else, but I keep telling myself that I am less miserable than they are. And I think there's something to that. There's something to practicing outside and just being around the cold and doing things in that environment that, you just kind of deal with it. It's a mindset. Other teams come in, you just give them a reason to start letting those feelings creep in. That, man, this sucks, man. I can't wait to get on the bus and get out of here and get back home and get in a warm environment. And just give them a reason to start having those thoughts when you can score early.
Look at that hat. Look at Dez putting it on. I got to love that. All right, I'm going to come to you about that hat. But, Nick, I first want to ask you about your reaction to Aaron Rodgers' comments.
Yeah, I mean, the hat is fantastic. You look like my Santa. I love it. I appreciate the gifts that you dropped off for my kids last week. And I think Aaron Rodgers hit the nail on the head, man. I think he is absolutely right. It's about being a little less uncomfortable than the other guys, because Aaron said the other team is like, I can't wait till we get on that bus. I promise you, many of the Packers are also like, I can't wait till we get in that locker room, but I can wait just a little bit longer than those other guys. So I think that he's right. It's just about giving your opponent one more thing to think about. Like, you got to think about covering Adams. You got to think about beating those corners. You got to think about blocking the Smith brothers. You got to think about Aaron Rodgers coming after you. You got to think about that running attack. And you also got to think about the weather. You also got to think about perhaps potentially some snow. It's just one more thing to think about. It's not a huge factor, but it's something that's on the minds of the players that you would assume the Packers, since they live in that mess, will be comfortable with and not think much of it.
So, RC, who's the best equipped to go in and take down the Packers if home field goes through Green Bay?
You know what? I feel like we're starting to talk about the Packers like they're unbeatable all of a sudden. Like there's no team that can go in there and win. But this is a flawed team, and there are some good teams in the NFC. I think when I look at Seattle playing better defensively, getting Chris Carson back healthy, and also having a quarterback who has gone to the East Coast and won, but a guy in Russell Wilson who can kind of match Aaron Rodgers with some of those wild plays and some of those super talented elite level quarterback football plays, you need to win there. And who's to say the Saints, that because if it's snowing out there and they force Sean Payton to give the ball to Alvin Kamara, can't run the football, rush the passer defensively, and play tight man-to-man coverage like we saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do early on in the season. Oh, by the way, and the Bucs have a quarterback who's played in miserable weather his entire career. And so do I think the Packers are the lead or the head dog in the NFC? Absolutely, but there are teams that are equipped and able to go in there, and even if it's only 3 hours of misery, figure out a way to win in the snow, in the cold against Aaron Rodgers.
You got to have a hat like Dez. That's what you got to have. So who's your pick, Dez, to go in and take them down if they can?
Guys, I think I would go with the Seattle Seahawks. I think, RC, you hit on the head when you talked about their defense. Their defense is getting better. Russell Wilson is a winner. He can win in any climate, any region, any condition. He can get out there and get it done. People talk about just one guy.